In the beginning, there was just contrast paints, and they were good. But we wanted more, and we got it. With time, more and more brands have appeared, making what I think is fair to call a contrast type equivalent paint. But which one is best for you? Which one should you pick? And which one is going to serve your painting style better? This is what this video is about. Hello fellow herders of the blue, and welcome to my channel, and also welcome to a video I'm really excited about for several reasons. First of all, because I'm introducing the first official partner of this channel, and in this case I'm very proud to introduce Radddel as my official Continental Europe shop. If you are in Europe and you want anything related to the hobby, trust me, anything, go to Radddel shop and they are going to serve you well. If you want to support me, go and check Radddel, because without them, this video wouldn't have been possible. They have been so generous to send me the full speed paint set. In an upcoming video, I'm going to do a full range test, yes, the 90 paints. But now, let's get cracking. Well, look at what we have here. Isn't this exciting? At least for me, it really is. Right now, every single major brand has its own range of contrast type paints equivalents. But how well did they copy it, or have they even improved on the original formula? This is what we're going to test out with a short series of different tests to see which of these ranges are best. At the end of the video, I'm going to do a tier list, because everyone in the internet loves a good tier list. But the tier list itself is not really the objective here, it's just something fun. The idea of this video is to be a helpful guide on which of these ranges fits you best as a painter, because we all have different preferences. So we're going to compare the most crucial properties of each brand against each other, and that way you can make the most informed decision when it's time to buy your contrast type paints. I have this plastic card with some tile texture, and we're going to do just a simple application. In this first test, our most important thing will be how good it looks, obviously, but also how quickly or slowly these paints dry, which is very important. Some people like a fast drying paint, some people prefer a longer drying paint. I personally prefer a longer open working time, that way I can make it look smoother. We will see how each of these behave in the same environment. And as you can see, I've selected these paints from each brand: Talazar Blue, Mystic Blue, Magic Blue, and Power Blue. Why? Because these are the same pigment on all of the ranges. Also, we are going to use that just to rule out the pigment behavior, especially in the drying time, because different pigments dry at different rates. I'm going to do a small section of this. The Citadel paints, I mean, everyone knows them. You know how they behave. They are a pleasure to use with. It just feels like a good old friend. The next one is probably the most interesting for me, because I don't have a lot of experience with it. I did try the first version, but well, with the reactivation problem, they just weren't for me. But the newer versions seem to be very good, and I'm really genuinely interested in see how they behave. What I'm seeing is that they flow. They have a lot more flow improver. They do flow way more than what contrast does. So these ones could be a lot better to do some recess shading, for example. This is a range I am very familiar with, because as you might know, I helped design this range. I was part of the testing team that brought these paints to the market. So obviously my opinion here is going to be biased, but I'm not giving opinions yet, I'm just demonstrating properties. And these feel more like Citadel than they do speed paints. They are thicker, and I think they do spread really well. And it's time now for the latest challenger in this category, which is AK with Quick Gen. These feel by far the thickest to apply. They aren't as flowy as Citadel, they're thick boys. That's not necessarily bad or good, it's just a property. We will get onto my opinions at the very end of the video. For now, this is just an informative process. I'm going to show you the properties of the different brands so you can choose what's best for you. I'm going to declare one sample fully dry when there is no shining spots on the tops of each brick. These recesses are very deep and it's going to take a very long time for them to fully dry. I'm just going to count like the upper surfaces. That is more than enough for me. After all of these paints are fully dry, I'm going to take high resolution pictures of each sample so you can see how they dry and the different textures that they achieve, which is very interesting, I think. I'm seeing incredibly big differences I wasn't really expecting, because when you use each paint in isolation, you don't really see all of those minute things, but this side-by-side comparison is being eye-opening. Here we have the results of the texture test, and to me is really interesting because there is clearly two different categories here. We have brands that have gone for a lot of texture and brands that have gone for the smoothest application possible, but of course that obviously comes at a price, because look at how much texture contrast has on all of the tiles. It picks up the minutest bit of texture, while speed paints and express really flatten out the surfaces. Just look at how flat these tiles are, for example. They are just flat, and look at how much texture Citadel gets in there, and the texture is there. It's just that these paints are formulated to dry as smooth as possible with the help of their formulation, the different chemicals that the paints have inside them. And here we get back to AK with a lot of texture. So if you are a painter that values texture over everything else and want to get the most texture possible out of your contrast painted minis, Citadel or AK is the way to go. If you prefer the smoothest dry result possible, Express or Speed Paint are for you. And in terms of finish, you can see how again the brands align in the same way. The more textured paints are more satin. You can see them just there, just a little bit satin, not nothing too crazy, while the two really flat smooth paints are matte, like really matte finish. So again, depending on your preferences, you will like one or the other. In the screen now you can see high resolution pictures blown out as big as possible, so you can see the finished dry result with the highest level of details as I can give to you, and hope those images are useful for you in the pursuit of your paint of choice. Let's move on to how they behave when they are mixed in with water. I'm just going to do that in 3 different ways, taking advantage of the 3 different brick layers. One is just going to be mixed 50-50 with water and applied as a wash. The next one is going to be applied again with water, but more of in a glaze way. And in the third one, I'm going to apply and feather out. And the important thing here is how they dry, not necessarily the quality of my application, which I can already tell you is not being good. These are the final results, and I'm going to put on the screen again a high resolution picture of each one. This is the same order that I did them, which is the same order that I've been doing all of the tests. And for me, there is a very clear winner in terms of working with water, and that is Express. You can see it in the picture, it's the smoothest, and in general it just behaves the best when mixed with water. So if you're looking for a paint to do glazes or advanced techniques with, I think this is a clear winner. And the feathering is quite good, but funny enough, not as good as Citadel. Citadel is the king of feathering. And the AK, the feathering is not bad. The glaze is the second smoothest, but you can clearly see that when mixed with a lot of water and done in a thick wash way, it just dries very inconsistently with a lot of coffee staining and weird artifacts. So they work well as a feathering paint, they work well as a glazing paint, but they don't work well when mixed with a lot of water and applied in a wash manner. And now we get into the smoothness test. We did some texture, and now I have the most challenging thing to paint with this paint ever, which is a Space Marine shoulder pads. I have some heresy ones here. They don't have trim, they don't have nothing. There is no escaping from this. These are purely smooth, and I have a lot of them because I'm debating on what to do here. Citadel just has one range, it's just all contrast. A speed paint, they have a couple of different things like the pastels, stuff like that, but they are generally the same paint. Express has 2, the normal and the intense, and they are a little bit different. They behave differently, that's why they are labeled differently. Because when formulating Express, one of the biggest concerns was to get a very consistent range, so every single paint will behave in the same way as the others. But the intense comes at the price of a slightly different behavior, more akin to what normal contrast does. So we have 2 different ranges with 2 different, ways of using it and different results. So that's interesting. And I think we should test both. And then we have the quick gens, which have 3 different types of paints: low intensity, medium intensity, and high intensity. I will leave you a review of the range and the swatch that I did, just linked in the top right corner, so you can see that they do behave very differently. The higher intensity you go, the thickest and more jello-like the paint is, with some and even in between these differentiations, There are outliers, there are, not with the low intensity, they all behave very well, but there are some mediums that are thicker, and there are some high intensity that are, again, thicker and more difficult to use, with two examples that are extremely thick, and to me, unusable in the state that they arrive to me. So I think we should test out each and every different one of this. I'm going to try and pick paints that behave, in my opinion, the best in each category, just to be as fair as possible, so we are in the best scenario possible. I'm not trying to make one brand look the worst just intentionally, which can be done in these kinds of tests. Let's start with Citadel, and I'm just going to keep using this paint because it's one that behaves the best. It's a lovely paint to use and you won't have any problems. Of course, there are bad paints in this range, like Ultramarine Blue, which is awful, Cygor Brown, notoriously difficult to get a smooth layer, Dark Angels Greens, etc, etc. But because that's the paint that I've been using, I'm going to keep using it. So the technique is going to be the same. Fully loaded brush. Apply the paint in as little brush strokes as possible and absorb any excess. Same thing for speed paint. I'm going to go with the same color. So the same thing, a lot of paint applied in as little brush strokes as possible. All of this has been primed with the same primer, obviously, and at the same time, obviously, as well. Let's move on to Express again. My base color is going to be Mystic Blue, the same paint I've been using all the time, and I'm going to choose one of the high intensity ones, of the intense ones for the next one. This is going to be the Vallejo section. I can really feel how much more time I have to work with this paint compared to Citadel, for example. And I'm going to go for Seraph Red for the intense. I think they all spread quite well, but if I had to choose, probably the best one would be Dreadnought Yellow, but I don't want to be classified as having too big of a bias, so I'm going to go for a medium behaving one. And now we're going to move on to AK territory. So, obviously, for the high intensity, I'm going to use Power Blue, because I'll be using the same paints for all of that, and it's one of the best high intensity paints. Again, there are high intensity paints that behave way worse, but that's not the point of this video. These are the colors that I've chosen. We have Bone Brown for the low intensity, Solar Yellow for the medium intensity, and of course, said Power Blue for the high intensity. Again, even the low intensity, they do feel thicker, and you can see that I haven't been able to get a smooth result. That's the best that I can do. It's already starting to dry, and I can't really touch that anymore. One thing you need to understand before we review these results is that this is a stress test. This is extending these paints to the very limit of what they can do, because this is such a smooth, flat and curved surface. There is just no way to hide from a slightly bad application. So I'm not looking to have the best result, because I can do another pass with the same paints and get a different result, either good or bad. I just want to see how easy it was to get to this point and how do they feel to apply. So for me, we have two clear winners sharing first spot on the podium, which are Speed Paints and Express. Really impressed how smooth Speed Paints are, but we already knew that, because this smoothness comes at a price of texture rendering, but they do look really good. In fact, the blue looks better on Speed Paints than it does on Express, but the red Express is just probably the best one of them all. I did the best job, and the paint itself helped quite massively to getting this really smooth, red result. Very, very impressed with this color. Second place is Citadel, which is, again, not the best, but not necessarily awful. As I said, every single minute mistake you make is going to show here. That's why I chose this piece of armor specifically, because they just don't forgive. And the last place, I will put the AKs. I just couldn't get a consistent result. The paints just don't flow as much as even contrast. They are not as flowy. They don't like to spread out by themselves as the other brands. But the results are not bad. They are workable. I can work with this. Probably the worst one is the bone one. The blue ones and the yellow ones are acceptable. Just so you know, I also did a reactivation test on these samples and nothing came out. Not Citadel, obviously, not speed paints, or Express, or AK. All of them are highly stable. In fact, this one, the Magic Blue, was one of the worst reactivators in the first iteration, so I'm very impressed. A really, really good job on the Army Painter team. They really design a cracking product. They are really good. We are now entering a subjective part of the video. I have to disclose again that I took part in the development of the Express paints, and thus I am highly biased. Just know that. That being said, my opinions are my own, and I would like to think that I have a fair opinion on how these paints behave. So let's start with our tier list, and we will start with Citadel. Citadel is such a good range. It's absolutely amazing. But it's true that the newcomers are doing stuff that Citadel is just not capable to do. And also, we really have to think about pricing here. This is the most expensive of the 4 offerings, and we have to think about that. That is an important factor. It doesn't behave well with water, it doesn't spread as smoothly over flat surfaces. You know, there is a lot to love and a lot not to love about Citadel. So for that, I'm going to give it a C, which I think it's fair. It's just the OG and is the yardstick by which we measure everything. We are moving into speed paints. Let me tell you one thing. I'm really, really impressed. They behave really well. They fixed every single mistake of the first iteration that I didn't like, and they have the biggest range in the market. It's incredible how good these paints have become in their second version. The only thing I don't like is how they behave with water. It's my, a small nitpick, but I think overall this is a winner range and it's a great choice. I'm going to give it an A. Now we move on to Express. To me, as I said, they are the best for what I do and how I like to work. This is amazing. That being said, there is one thing I don't like, and it's that some of the colors, due to how flat they dry, lose some of its intensity. For example, the deep black, Hospitalier black, and the Seraph red, which looks good on camera, but on hand, reds that are super matte are less intense than reds that are satin. That's why I still use Flesh Tears red and Blood Angels red from Citadel, because to me, they just have the best color. I'm really tempted to give it an S, but I can't because it's just missing that little bit. And honestly, no range is perfect. So I'm going to give it an A+. And we move on to our last contender. I love AK, I love what they do. I genuinely think the Gen 3 acrylics are S tier. They are the best acrylics you can buy, maybe shared with Model Color and Pro Acryl. it's that kind of paint. It's just like you can't make acrylic paint any better than that. They are absolutely incredible. But this product is just not for me. I like to paint in a very specific way, and I do paint a lot of Space Marines and flat panel models, but they are really, really good if you like to use inks, because they do have a satin finish. They do glaze really well. So if you're going to apply filters and you want just a modern take on classic inks, this is for you. Are they better than Citadel? I'm not sure. I think they are a parallel evolution. So I do think they deserve a C. This is the end of the video, and please don't take that tier list any seriously. It's just my own personal opinion. The main objective for the video is to showcase objectively and with very precise and controlled tests how each brand behaves and what you should expect from each one in comparison. Because the most important thing when we have a market that is so saturated with basically the same product from a ton of brands is to make sure that we as consumers are as informed as possible, so we spend our really hard-earned money in something that will make us happy. Because if you go and buy a product and then you find out you don't like it, there is no worse feeling than that. You really feel betrayed. I can give you my opinion in a ton of videos, but I do prefer that you come and watch this video and make your own opinions. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you to all of my lovely patrons that make these videos possible. I will see you very, very soon in the new studio, and in the meantime, I will catch you in the next one. Bye!